When I was a young girl, I had a dream of becoming a nun. And I had this nun that taught me in the first grade. She wore a habit. Her name was Sister Raimunda. She had peaches and cream complexion. She was very patient with all the students, never raised her voice. I wish my mom would have been a lot like her, but there were 6 of us, so that didn't happen. And then I ran into Sister Raimunda in the 4th grade when my grandpa died at his rosary, and she was now Sister Janet. She wore regular clothes, no more habit, and so my dream of becoming a nun was pushed to the side. And then I decided, I'm going to get married someday. So I had all these visions of a perfect wedding. You see these shows on TLC, The Perfect Wedding, or 5 Weddings for 5 Brides, things like that. And so I dreamed of having this wedding where I would be taken to the church in a horse-drawn carriage with white horses, and then when I get to the church, they let the doves go, and the angels weep when we exchange our wedding vows. It was really quite out there. Well, and I'm the oldest of six children, and I was going to be the first one to get married. Well, that didn't happen, but I met my future husband at Sparkle Ice in 1988, and I was 28 years old. And I wanted to get married on August 8th, 1988. Well, my future spouse was in his 30s, and he was not in that big of a hurry to get married, unfortunately. I told him the story about my mom and dad. They met and they got married 6 months later, and he goes, well, I'm not like your mom and dad. So we waited a while. And Mark became a truck driver, and he worked for Swift. So when you are going to marry a truck driver, guess what? You get to plan the wedding by yourself. But there were a few things I wanted his help with. I wanted to write our wedding vows, and he was totally turned off on that. No way. We'll just do the normal vows. And I said, okay. So I went to ask my mom if she would go with me to pick out a wedding dress. And for some reason, my mom didn't want to. So one of my coworkers from Sparkle Ice, and we went to Azteca. It's down on 12th Street in Washington. And I had a dream of wearing a designer gown. Well, when I got my check from my dad, it was for $2,000. Well, there wasn't a budget for any type of designer gown. We went to the bargain closet in Azteca, but I found a beautiful wedding dress for $300. And it didn't fit me exactly like a glove, but as the big day came along, it fit perfect. It was nice. I had to rent a hoop skirt for it. And I seemed to have all these people pop out of the woodwork to help me. A friend of mine at Coca-Cola, I was actually working 2 jobs about the time I was getting married. She made wedding cakes, so I had her do my wedding cake. And then my coworker at Coca-Cola, another coworker, she had a sister that did flowers, so I used B for my flowers. And then somebody knew a DJ, and so it went. Well, I went and picked out all my flowers, and she had them all in this book. I went through and picked everything out, and just beautiful flowers. And I have 3 sisters, so my sisters were all in the wedding, and then my best friend at the time was my maid of honor. And my husband, or my future husband, had buddies that lived in the Quad Cities. That's Davenport, Iowa, Moline, Illinois area. So they flew in for the wedding, and each of my sisters walked down the aisle with, one of the friends, and his brother was also in the wedding. And then my niece and nephew were also in the wedding because they were like 3 and 4 at the time. So it just was perfect, there was everybody to fill a role. Then I picked out the cake, and my colors were blue and silver. And, I wish I would have had a picture. Probably in this day and age, you could probably put it on the computer and see exactly how your cake is going to turn out. So I wouldn't suggest blue as a color for a wedding cake. But anyway, that's the color I was stuck on, so that's the color it was. And Mark said, oh, I want to wear a white tuxedo. And I said, honey, you're going to be so washed out looking. My husband is a blonde. He's fair complected. I said, you need to wear black. Or how about black and silver with the blue cummerbund? And I talked him into that. Then somebody's friend made all the bridesmaid dresses and the flower girl dress. You know, it just worked out perfectly. You know, things were just going along. We had to pick out a song to dance to. And somebody said, you know, there's this Randy Travis song, Forever and Ever, Amen. So I put the cassette tape, you know, this was early 90s, and the tape player, and Mark listened to that song and he goes, that sounds like a hillbilly song. How about that Survivor song, The Search Is Over? And my friend Lori goes, wow, that sounds so final, doesn't it? About that time, Luther Vandross came up with the song, Here and Now. That was a perfect song. It was written for a wedding. So we practiced dancing to it several times. We probably should have gone to Arthur Murray and take some dancing lessons, but we didn't have that much time. We met with the priest and we went to my parents' parish. It was Mount Carmel in Tempe, and Father Saul Madrid, he was from Chihuahua, Mexico, and he had a little West Highland White Terrier that lived in the rectory with him. And we didn't meet him very much because, you know, Mark was always on the road, but he said, you know, you need to get together with this couple that lives around the block from the church. So we met with them, and then we had to go on a engagement encounter. It was at Borgade High School, 30th Avenue and Camelback. And you know, the best thing about that weekend was there was this thing called a decision to love. And I'll give you a great example. Mark is really into football, and so I would say, sure, honey, I'll sit and watch the Bears game with you and cheer for them. And, you know, I'm really not into football, except that I am in the football pool, so when I have money on something, I'm into it. But anyway, so that was the best thing I learned about that weekend. And as you know, the time drew closer, I was getting very nervous about, oh, are you going to make it home? And yes, I'll be home. So the Wednesday before the wedding, he got home and his buddies took him out for a bachelor party. And it was his mom's husband and his brother and then a few of the groomsmen. His dad wasn't even in town, which, anyway, that's how that went. And he comes home from his bachelor party, and I got off work about midnight that night, and he comes in the house with a Budweiser can with a nipple on top, and he's just all liquored up. And I go, what have you been drinking? Oh, I've been doing shots, and then they paid for a lap dance. He was going on and on. They went to a strip bar, so. Then he says, I'm just going to sleep on the couch. And then about 2 o'clock in the morning, I hear this fumbling and this sound in the closet and this muttering, and all of a sudden the front door opens, and actually we lived in an apartment. I see this naked guy walk out on the balcony and pee, and that is my future husband out there, and I'm thinking, oh no, maybe this isn't such a good idea. But anyway, he went back to bed, and then the next day we had to run around and buy all the food because we were delivering it to a caterer. We were trying to cut corners, so I told him all about the night before, and he couldn't believe it. And I said, well, weren't you drinking whiskey and beer, and you know how you Kincaids get when you drink? And he said, yeah, but I don't think I did that. And I go, you really did that? And so nobody could believe that he did that. Then the Friday before we have or the Thursday before we got married on a Friday night, we have our rehearsal dinner, and you know, we practice at the church and everything, and we go to Marie Callender's, and his mom pays for that. His mom and his stepdad and his grandma drove out here from Illinois. My mother-in-law is totally turned off on flying. When they were out here before the wedding, they got into an accident when they went out to Fort McDowell to go gambling, and so their car was in the shop. They had to get a loaner. Anyway, then the next day we have a lot of running around to do, get all the decorations to the American Legion where we were going to have our reception. and then go over what cousins are gonna read what readings at the Mass. And it's a full Catholic Mass because Mark and I are Catholics, so. And I'm getting ready, and my friend, and I was professionally made up, my friend goes, there's some guy at the door that wants to see you. They had this big dressing area in the church bathroom. And I'm thinking, oh, some old boyfriend found out I'm getting married and wants to try to talk me out of it. And it was the priest, and he goes, I just wanted to let you know that there's a wedding rehearsal before your wedding. And I was thinking, great, we were going to do pictures before the wedding. So we just, we're going with the flow. My mom never came back to see me to say, good luck, or here's a penny to put in your shoe, or here's something blue. And then I'm getting ready to go down the aisle, and my bouquet falls apart. And, because it was really top heavy. Well, I had a bouquet of roses for Mary. This is something that's traditionally done in a Catholic wedding. I wound up taking the roses for Mary for me because that's the only thing I had to walk down the aisle with. So I walked down the aisle with my dad, and he turns me over to my husband, and he's teary-eyed. Here's his oldest daughter. And so the wedding goes off without a hitch, hopefully. Well, no, not quite. We go to light our unity candle, and it won't light. And the priest is going, what do we do now? And I go, let's just pretend like it's lit. When you see the pictures, it looks like it lit. And we get through the rest of the wedding. We walk down the aisle, and then okay, we're gonna do our pictures. Where's Mark's dad at? You know what? Mark's dad went to the hotel to change out of his tuxedo. He wasn't in a single wedding picture, except for the rear of him and the sign of peace handshake. And Mark's dad's nickname was Big Guy. Well, the hindsight of him, that was my nickname for him for about 18 years. I had this grudge against my father-in-law, I really did. And we got the pictures done, and then my mom, at the end of the reception, she goes, what about all the leftover food? And she's coming to me, and I just start to fall apart. But my sister-in-law goes, we'll take it, we'll drop it off at their house, don't worry about it. Well, you know what? It wasn't the most perfect day in the world. It wasn't. But my youngest sister got married the same year I did, in April of 1990. She was divorced about 5 years later. My sister that's 6 years younger than me, she's on her second husband. My youngest sister is divorced from her second husband. I'm the only one in my family that's still married to her first husband, and sure, it wasn't the perfect day, and it's not the perfect life, because that's a movie. But you know what? We're still together, we still love each other, we have 2 kids, and that's really what it's all about. And I'm so glad that I didn't have that perfect wedding, because I sure have a great